We are families, we are caregivers, we are parents to children with disabilities and medical complexities. We are rarely familiar. We get together to learn, to relate, and to laugh a lot while we share each other's unique family experiences of raising the rarest of the rare. Our goal is to unite, inspire, educate, and empower people living a rarely familiar life. And we're so glad you're here.
Hello and welcome to Rarely Familiar. This is Jen here with my friends and co-hosts, Tram and Haley, where we dig into the realities of raising the rarest of the rare. Today we have a fun show about dads, and they're not just any dads off the street. These are Sadie and Felix's dads and Tram and Haley's husbands. So it's going to be an exciting show. Looking forward to it. But before we dig in and talk to our great guests, we are going to just say, hey, what's going on? How are you two? Hey, I think it's interesting that we're doing this show this week, a few days after Father's Day, right? It's kind of fun.
We had fun. We had a good day.
Yeah, what'd you guys do?
It was just this last Sunday. We started out the day with some cards, ended at a restaurant. All the boys couldn't coordinate. You know, there are two other teenage boys too, in addition to Felix, and they were both working that night. So we ended up going to the restaurant where the boys worked. That's just the way we roll here. We just kind of make it all work. We had some moments of togetherness, which was good. And that's what Tim had asked for. That's how we spent the day. What about you?
The calendar is sacred, right? To plan our lives with kids. And so Shaun, I go, oh, you're golfing? He's like, yeah. So he did 9 holes. We have a connection to Switzerland, and in Switzerland, they serve this dish called the rosti, which is really a potato pancake, pretty much. We cannot seem to perfect it, but I found it at Kowalski's, which is our local grocery store. It's packaged, and I try to make it crispy, but I didn't. So that was his breakfast that I made, and the weather was so humid. And we were planning to go to this Vietnamese community festival outside. But Sadie doesn't do well in the heat. So Shaun hung out with her for a little bit. And then I took my mom to the festival so she could see what it was all about. And then my mom made him dinner. It was nice for him.
Oh, your mom's a good cook. Yeah.
She is.
I remember her spring rolls.
She's making 3,000 of them for the festival right now. That's what happened at Father's Day at our house.
It was an interesting day because it started off with my ex-husband. So it coincidentally was also my wedding anniversary on Sunday.
Oh.
And I'm not married anymore. So
yeah, okay.
Not that I'm attached to it, but I was just like, oh, this is interesting. And he came over to get one of our kayaks with the boys, and it was my weekend with them. So, you know, when it's a holiday like Mother's or Father's Day, that trumps the schedule. So he came and got the boys and got a kayak, and they took off. And I had this just kind of like, oh, this sucks. This is like a heavy day. Yeah, it's layered with things, right? So because we're not married, obviously I did not join them, but I did get to see my father that evening for a walk. But it was too humid, so we couldn't go on a walk. He's 81. It was like, nope, can't do this. So we hung out in his apartment with air conditioning, and I gave him hiking poles for his Father's Day gift. And he said, I'm going to put these in my closet and I won't use them. And so we had a conversation about that. And I'm like, okay. Because they look like canes, and he doesn't want to have canes and look like he's an old man.
Oh, God forbid.
Yes. Right. And I said, no, Dad, these are hiking poles. Like, we use these. Makai and I use these hiking in Colorado. They're awesome. It will build like upper body strength. His balance is off, so it will help you not fall. And he's like, nope, I am not going to be seen with canes. But he goes, I will use them at your house and walk around your neighborhood because I don't care what people think about me. So I was like,
great.
Okay.
Invite him over.
All right, there you go. So that was my Father's Day. So let's meet the dad. And I thought it would be fun to have my co-host introduce the dads who are their husbands and just give a little snapshot of them. So Haley, do you want to start?
Are we going to talk about how we met?
Sure.
So Tim and I met, 13 years ago, Tim? Is that 12, 13? I don't know. So we met several years ago at a Minnesota Interactive Marketing event when I was starting a nonprofit and I was looking for a speaker at an event. I said, I'm looking for a speaker for my event. It's coming up the next month. I had originally had somebody that kind of bailed last minute. And somebody said, oh, do you know Tim? Tim loves to talk. And so It turned out the event that I was at, he was the president of that organization. He came over and said, sure, I would love to speak at your event. And we kind of had some, email interaction over the next month or so. And I got to know him and kind of flirted with him a little bit over email. He sent me a picture of himself for the poster. I was like, oh, he's kind of anything to add to that, how we met?
The version that I tell is that
Oh,
the holiday event, a trade association event, right? And yeah, I'm the host, so I'm responsible for ensuring that 200 people are having a good time. And you got introduced to me by, one of the other attendees. And so I was sort of presented as like, here's Tim, he can help solve your problem. But you didn't know at the time that I was the president of the association hosting the event.
I
Oh,
did not.
funny.
So your body language and your reaction to meeting me, I don't remember if you exactly said who the F are you,
Come on.
but I just recall it being a little bit of like, well, who's this guy? Like, how's he going to
Oh,
help
that's so
solve all
funny.
my problems?
Good.
And then I was sort of formally introduced, and it was like, oh, I see. Oh, okay. I get it.
Hey, maybe he can solve some of my
That's
problems.
funny.
Maybe.
Look at
I'll
him.
take it.
Yeah. We met through business, and went from there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Jen. I was in love.
Oh, yeah.
Love at first sight. So who is Tim?
Lucky
What does he
us.
do? What does he do?
I'm a
Basically-
freelance marketing and advertising problem solver, and I also teach at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. There you go.
I have a friend dating a guy who's a student there.
Hmm.
We'll talk about that later.
Great school. It's
Yeah,
a
great
wonderful school, and
Great
it's
school,
a
great
huge
art
honor
fairs.
to be able to interact with students and try to encourage them and show them their potential.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Trum,
Trump.
tell us everything.
So Sean and I met actually. So my friend Amber, who I met through my ex-boyfriend actually at the time, lived next door to Sean's high school friend, Rob. So Rob was having people over. I had invited my friend, Will, come. And ironically, Sean was hitting on some other girl at the time because that's just how it was. And I was like, oh, he's cute. And so I found out from Amber what the real scoop was. And so that was 25 years ago that we met.
Wow.
We dated for 10 years, back and forth long distance, different cities, different things. And we will be married in October, 15 years. So, yeah.
Gritting the teeth.
It's not about our marriage. I feel old. And right, like, I'm like, oh my God. So that's the story of how we met. So a little bit about Sean. Sean was in Peace Corps Morocco for 3 years. And when I met him, he really didn't have a life path. So when we met, he also came here to Mankato to get his undergrad degree because he decided that he wanted to be in the medical field. So he's a physician assistant by trade. And he loves his new job because he actually gets to work with the homeless and underinsured. So his passions are that he loves
Dirt.
It's,
On my house.
yeah, I know. He loves being outside, all things nature. He loves riding his bike. He loves camping, kayaking, boating, anything, outside. So that's how I could describe Sean's passions for sure.
Sean, do you have any friend? Single friend? Because I mean, those are my interests. So I figure if you have friends that are doing that with you, perhaps, just
Oh,
we can talk about that later.
dirt loving single male.
Dirt loving single guys. That's what I'm looking for right now.
I
So,
might know a guy.
oh,
I might know a guy.
all right, good. Well, yeah.
Welcome
Well,
to
we
the
do
dating
we
show.
are recording, not taping. We are recording a show next Friday on dating while raising a disabled child, or we have some title in the works. But I have two guests on who are also single like myself, navigating the dating world. So stay tuned for that.
We always ask this, what's your tie-in to the disability community? And because you two are obviously both dads to kids with medical complexity, that's your tie-in. So we're going to change it a little bit this episode and ask you if there was any tie-in previous to the birth of Sadie or the birth of Felix that connected you to the disability community, or was this your first introduction?
This was fresh to me. I had really no tie-in. I didn't know any families. I did briefly work with, I basically worked as a PCA for let me see, he was a teenager with a chromosomal anomaly, Angelman syndrome, actually. I think that was what it was called. But that was sort of, I was in between jobs. That was a few months, but really not a lot. And I did go to now I'm thinking about things. I did do semester of once a week community service. I think we went to a disabled school. I want to say mostly with other chromosomal anomalies. Again, I think I was maybe a freshman year in high school.
Had you even thought about that until now, right?
Yeah.
Wow. That was a while ago, but you did PCA. You had a little window into this world.
Nothing that prepared me for what ended up occurring much later in life.
I'm on the same page in the sense of, we had members of our church who had autism, or, in most cases, if they were in a wheelchair, it was because of a sports injury. So the idea of disability, but it being temporary, I think in all of my schooling, it was very rare to have someone who was in a wheelchair or some other type of cognitive or physical disability. So, Felix's birth, even sort of in utero, was the first time really for me, and the wake up call to like, oh, life is going to be remarkably different at this point, and that's the realization that kind of begins the process.
And I just had a light bulb go off. I was just thinking about it. So Shaun and I both grew up in the Midwest, but we both went to private schools growing up. So grade school and high school. So the whole immersion, we were like, now Sadie goes to a public school because by law, they have to provide that education piece. And, Haley, you've talked about it in the past where you had that exposure at school and you had that whole buddy system with having a child with some kind of a medical disability. I think that's an also big difference of we didn't really have it even exposed to us, even in school. So there is a big difference of also the times we grew up. We're a little bit older too. It was a whole different society back then. So
in researching this show, I looked up the word fathering. And in the dictionary, the very generic definition was the activity of bringing up a child as a father. And so then later that day, I was on a walk with my dad again, and my dad's a psychologist. And I said, how would you define being a father? And he said, to be loving and caring and protecting, to step outside of our needs and to tend solely to the needs of the child and their development. So I think with you, Tim, I thought it'd be interesting for you to share, like, you have two neurotypical sons and you have Felix who has more medical complexities.
Right.
However we define all of these, right? So how has it been, like, what has been the difference for you of raising a child who's in a wheelchair and has many different needs than your other two sons? It's very contradictory in some ways, but it's also universal, right? The love that we have for our children. So,
right. And all three of those boys, are loved equally, and all of them are charming and frustrating, each in their own way. Right. So, in my life, Max and Eli, the older kids, that's what I knew, right? Max is now 18, Eli is 17. And so, there was a long period of time there where it's like I had, as you described, neurotypical kids. Though I would argue that it's rare for any kid to be purely typical. They're all kids have their eccentricities growing up, right? And their struggles, emotionally, socially. So, but then Felix shows up, and it's interesting. We were just going through a high school graduation for Max. And so we dig out the box of homework from second grade and third grade and fourth grade, and all of the things he's drawn about who he's going to be when he grows up, and pictures and things like that. And all of the photos when Felix was born. And it was very interesting to look at Max holding Felix, and Felix was a little bit bigger than a dollar bill when he was born. So this tiny little baby. And then you've got, Max, was about 9 or 10, kind of awkwardly, very carefully holding his brother. And to see the three of them, well, Eli and Max, kind of contemplate and come to grips with, oh, I have another brother, and that other brother is going to be a little bit different. And they clearly didn't know what that meant, and neither did I, right? So kind of learning the lingo, like, what do these words mean that the doctors are throwing around? What does this mean for day-to-day scheduling? What does it mean for the functions of our house? What does it mean for nutrition and all of the things? Because I only had one model for raising kids, which was Max and Eli. And so in a way, I look at what Felix has given us as a gift. He's opened up the door and helped us kind of see the world, certainly in a more diverse way. And I think it's helped Max and Eli kind of, again, gain a broader perspective of who's out there in the world and what do they need and how do they function. We just finished completion of this elevator in the house. And for 6 months, you've got construction people cutting holes in walls and showing up at 7 a.m. to move things around. And for teenagers, that's like very disruptive. Like, who's in the house and why is the dog barking? And it's been a gift, really, honestly, to kind of raise both Max and Eli and Felix and kind of see how they rub off on each other. And I will say, like, it took Max and Eli a while to get used to having a brother and then having a brother with medical complexity, right? And understanding that. But now, like, they have the things that they connect on, Minecraft, Roblox, certain music, like they can communicate with each other. And it's great that, Eli has kind of figured out Felix's sense of humor. So they can, he comes in, Eli walks into the room and he'll say, "Hey, little brother, Felix, what's up?" And then, of course, Felix ignores him because that's what you do when you're 7 and you have an iPad. And then Eli's like, "Brother, I'm in your face. I'm here. You turn, like, pay attention to me." Right. So it's been kind of fun to see them evolve. And I'll just say for myself, you spend enough time in the hospital, you spend enough time with the specialists and the doctors and reading up and understanding and learning from all of you. It opens your head up and it gives you a different perspective about the world in general. And it's given us the chance to, go advocate in the state capitol and you just talking to friends and family, because they kind of look in on our world and or quote unquote typical. I mean, of course, everybody's got their own challenges, but to be able to kind of live the life that we have, and so that other people can, we like to share it. Like, we're unafraid of sharing pictures and activities so that other people can go and, we bring Felix places, because I think that living that quote unquote out loud is important, just so that other people get the chance to see him at Target, see him at Costco, see him in the park, and, be able to engage with Felix and kind of understand how he navigates the world and how he communicates. So,
that's so interesting, because I have had teachers at Julian's school say, "You were like the mom that, we don't have any other families like you who bring Julian everywhere. You expose him to everything."
Yeah.
And so I go, are we still living in a culture where if your child has medical challenges, that they're just not brought out? I mean, I think we are on one level, because for that comment to be made, I was like, oh, really? Because how can I not bring him out? Because our family's doing this and that.
The response to that is, it's hard. You know,
it is
I know
hard.
it. Like,
Oh,
getting
yeah.
Julian up and ready and out the door, getting Felix up and ready out the door. Sometimes it's a lot easier to just say, let's just stay home,
Oh, totally.
let's let him
Yeah.
play on the iPad. I get it. Like, I think about the work that, the three of you did around adult changing tables in public restrooms here in Minnesota, and that kind of advocacy. And then you start to realize that the medically complex community inside of the much larger disability community, like, we're talking about all kinds of people and the challenges. So, a long way of answering your point, which is to say, it's much easier to hide. It's much easier to kind of keep to yourself and not get out and live in the world amongst all the typical people.
It's true. So
It's not the
Shaun,
right thing to do. Hopefully, it's out there.
exactly. So going back to kind of the original question I asked him, this is a little different and it's maybe even a little heavy, but do you ever, because Sadie's your only child, so this is your one shot at being a father, being a dad, do you ever imagine how it would have been had things been differently with her? Do you allow your mind to go there? Or is that something that you just have said, this is what I have, this is my life, and this is now a gift, like Tim was saying? Like, is there any kind of volleying back and forth with that concept for you?
I would say not anymore. I think in the
Okay.
beginning it was,
It's grief, right?
yeah, it was,
beginning.
I mean, the disabilities just kept piling on, like one after the other.
Mhm.
The only thing we knew in utero was a heart condition. And then having some explanation about what that entailed in life. She's not gonna be a track star. Okay.
Mhm.
So what? All right, I can live with that. And then it was, she can't hear. That sucked. But she can move, and there's some communication that can still happen. And then fast forward another, I don't know, maybe a couple of years, and then there was no sight as well. So after that, it just became, what do I do with a person that can't see, hear, multiple, and the heart ended up being not that big of a deal, easily correctable, even through the post surgical recoveries were worse than the actual surgery. But then it's just time, really, just a lot
Yeah.
of
Time
a
and
lot of
familiarity, right?
a lot of woe was me. I didn't sign up for this. Um, you know, it just sort of became the only way at least I got through is it's just it took years. I don't know how I would have advanced that ability to accept of the kind of person that she is. To answer your question, no, I mean, not anymore. It's just it's acceptance, really.
Right.
Mm,
Actually, I
yeah.
went through the same thing with Julian in terms of grieving, like you said, Haley, that we're grieving what my script was, that this is, I expected to have two boys, the first one, robust. I expected the second one to be following his path. And my neurologist said, well, Jen, like, it's your expectation that you have to work on. Julian, actually, in his world, he's quite happy. This
Yeah.
is all he knows, right? So, like,
Mhm.
this is all Sadie knows. She doesn't know about running on the track. She doesn't know about this or that. So I thought that for some reason resonated with me and that was helpful, but it's still a process. I still, I was with Julian the other day at a track meet and he ran the 60-meter dash and he went off on one side of the track to say hi to his brother, Makai. And then Makai got him back on the track. And then he decided, oh, should come say hi to mom on the other side of the track. And he's clapping for himself. And then finally the officials are like waving the flags, like this way, this way. And Julian runs down and finishes, And meanwhile, watching this as a runner myself and then seeing the races before and after of kids who are able-bodied and boom, doing the thing. It is like a gift, but there is always that comparison for me. So I think that's just as probably a natural experience for us as parents, not just fathers, but mothers, right? Caregivers.
Did you have something you wanted to add to what Shaun was saying?
I think also in our journey, it's the scale. So, right, we had no exposure. And then the first 2 years were super isolating because you're just trying to survive.
Mm.
You could barely get out of the house. And so I think then as we started making friends within this community and meeting you and everybody else, I think you also realize, like, okay, there are different things that she can give us, and there's different things that other kids can give their parents. And so I think it was seeing it and then also seeing other people living their lives too, I think helped. Like, one of our friends, they were like, oh yeah, we take her everywhere. And I think it was also nice having that perspective because we had never seen anything, right? To the scale of what Sadie had. So
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the choice, right? You have this person now in your life, and you can choose to kind of isolate and, you know, have all sorts of regret or whatever, or you can choose to go and meet people and learn and realize, okay, there's a world out there that my child is going to experience on a different level and in a different way than other kids. And, I think it's fun when we see our kids collectively just sort of, I was thinking about that photo shoot that we did when we were walking over in Edina, and just kind of the way that they were experiencing the trees and the area and the water, and, um, and that's kind of a great gift that, that we can choose to recognize it is a gift, and what are we going to do with it?
agree. And I think what's nice, and I spoke to this a little bit before, and so I'll ask you guys the question is, we've built up, Haley, myself, and Jen are each other's support. As you guys are going through it, how did you find your support? Did you meet other people? I know we met through the Crescent Cove support group, but
Mhm.
for both of you guys, who else do you guys use for support? Or who do you talk to, I guess? It doesn't even have to be support's a big word. I guess, like,
Yeah.
do you guys
Guys
tell
don't
your
need emotional support.
yeah.
They're good.
We're guys.
Right?
Keep a little now. Yeah. That
I know.
TikTok that TikTok meme. We're guys. Um. Okay, so the stereotype is that all men are stoic and don't need friends, and what are emotions for, and whatever. And of course, that's just sad and not true. I feel really fortunate that my parents, my dad especially, modeled. He's always had this like circle of friends, and unfortunately, a few have passed away, and that circle's gotten smaller. But I have this memory of my dad and his quote unquote hunting and fishing group that would go on trips together that never involved hunting or fishing. They usually involved like museums and a restaurant. I feel really lucky that I've got a circle of other dads that I've met through marketing and advertising, and we all have kids. Um, but there are different stories within those families, different physical challenges or mental challenges or societal challenges. And part of the value of that particular group for me is that we've recognized not only can we talk with each other about being a dad and all of the emotions of that, we need to. Um, and so, and especially so Felix shows up, and I had a group of people that I could tell about, like, yeah, Haley's pregnant, and we've just discovered, in utero that Felix is going to be a little bit different. I mean, we didn't know his name at that time, but I remember talking about the scans and the blood tests, and when we started to first learn words like arthrogryposis and genetic deletions, and like, what on earth does any of that mean? But just to have someone around you who's like, I'm with you. The journey is going to be long and unknown, and there may be difficulty, right? But that I'm here with you to listen and be curious. I feel really fortunate that I've had that friend group in support, because this is not a journey you want to take alone.
But they have some varying levels of understanding,
Well, yeah,
and
but let's also just, one other thing that's worth saying about being a dad in 2024 is you can choose to be alone and to do the whole journey by yourself. That is a choice. Or you can choose to seek out other human beings, right? You can make a choice to build a friend network. And is it easy? No. Is it important? Absolutely. And I think, especially when you're talking about medical complexity, this is not a journey anyone should take alone or desire to take alone. Like, once we learned about Felix's situation. I think for us, it was like, okay, it's imperative that, the people who care about me, my friends, my family, like that they know that I tell them what's occurring and what I'm feeling about it. To kind of create that permission and that space. It doesn't help Felix if I'm going to be carrying around a bunch of regret or shame or unnecessary emotions related to his condition. That doesn't help him and it doesn't help me. So it's kind of a requirement, I think, on parents to actively build that support network and to recognize like, oh, okay, I need a support network, especially. All parents do, but especially parents of medically complex kids need that. And it takes effort,
So
Yeah, it's
Shaun,
amazing.
do you have like your biking friends, or what kind of support network do you have?
Um, uh, my close, but before kids, I guess my closest group of friends, we all had kids around this, older, around the same age. And so it was just, and all of them would kind of reach out to me specifically, knowing it was just how difficult it might be. And for me, it was just helpful to know that I had support, really, and to just um, talk about struggles, and they would do the same thing. But I think a lot of them didn't really want to delve too much into their situations, because knowing that it wasn't half, just assuming wasn't half the challenges that we were going through. Which is, it turns out that yeah, a lot of these parents, a lot of my friends that had, um, to use the neurotypical kids, had, they had, especially through COVID, they had really super challenging, and still will have through, through the preteens and what, just very challenging situations that I was like, I after a while, I thought, this is not so bad, actually. Because we don't have to deal with any of that.
Right.
The personalities and the anxiety and the depression, like, I mean, suicidal, even just having to, and then
Yeah.
therapy and all that kind of stuff. We don't have to deal with any of that. But so,
Mhm.
the more I heard about the struggles of my friends with normal kids, the more I felt better about our situation.
Right?
Her mental health, from what we know, is good. And I think sometimes it's those invisible disabilities that I think sometimes are even harder for parents to deal with. And so, like you said, it's just, Tim, you said that, all kids have their idiosyncrasies and eccentricities. And so
Right.
it's just dealing with the whole person. And I think that's what we've really realized. Like, Sadie loves water, and we just need to bring ways of joy to her. And, we need to cherish those moments. And while it's a lot harder for us, for sure, it's in more physical ways, I think, in mental
Hard is
tiredness.
relative.
Like, we're a
Right.
little bit different,
Right.
where we're like, nobody knows that we have 10 appointments in 1 week, but they might have bigger things that are way heavy, or not bigger. There's no comparison, because I think raising a child is just difficult, right? Like,
Right.
people say marriage is hard. And I was like, no one ever told me it's not really the marriage, add the children. And I think that's what makes marriages hard, is making it
100%.
full stop.
But the support piece is interesting because I'll have, like you, Sean, I'll have friends who don't have the same kind of challenges I do. And they'll say, well, it doesn't even compare to you. I mean, I don't even want to say this. I don't want to share it. And I always give them permission. Like, what are you talking about? Your story and your experience is just as valid. Mine is different. And I think that's like, and I hear you, like Tim, you saying just getting that support is so helpful for men. And so whether they have children who have challenges like yours or not, that support for men is so important. But then you take it a level deeper, and part of our community with Really Familiar is, okay, but let's tap in a little deeper to the support within the actual kind of day-to-day challenges that we have that is unique, right? But it's all good. All the support is good, right? Wherever we get it. So yeah.
What else can we tell you?
Well, you two have any words of advice, tips, or tricks? So if you were meeting a dad who just had a child that may have a similar path as Sadie or Felix, what would you guys say to this father? Since the show is on dads, like what as a father to a father, what would you say?
I think my first thought is you're not alone. You or your spouse or your family. And as we've discussed, like recognizing that you have an opportunity to discover and connect with other people who are going through what you're going through. Like the task of building a team, if you don't have immediate family that's going to be, that you recognize they're just not going to be helpful, or your friend group, like building that network is almost a job requirement. So I would encourage thinking about that, like what's the team I can build that's going to support myself and my family and my kid. Even if it's just, another human being who has the patience to listen to you. Right. And then I think the second thing is just curiosity. You're going to encounter all kinds of just 25-cent words and terminology and process paperwork that defies explanation. And having a willingness to engage in that stuff, I think, is really important, because raising a medically complex kid is a team sport, and so build a network and get curious. Is that going to happen for you on day one? No, of course not. It's going to take time. I think for myself, it's been like the last 5 years, because the first 2 were almost like we're just putting out fires and trying to like get gas in the car and feed the other kids and get from place to the other. Right. So, but then you have moments where you can recognize, oh, okay, I would function better if I informed and worked with my friend group, right? To just deal with the emotions. And then, oh yeah, I should really try to understand what all this, Felix has, 17 doctors. What does each one of them bring to the table, and why? So networking and curiosity are the 2 things I would encourage.
What about you, Shaun? That's great.
I mean, to second all of that, but also I would also add, almost as importantly, that despite thinking that, and that these children are such high maintenance, that it's equally as important to have time for yourself.
Yeah. So you got to take care of yourself.
So you got to, first, really, and then translates into being, back to being a good father. You just can't if your head is not in the right place. And I think it's just, I think it's just for every parent, but because having that time to remove yourself and be with other friends and activities, it can still happen despite so much of the challenges in the beginning.
Yeah. Agreed.
Right. Makes sense. Well, thank you both.
You're welcome. I'm really proud of the 3 of you for having this concept and working through all of the craziness of assembling it and producing it and figuring out how to make a podcast happen. So,
well, it wouldn't happen without the support of you guys. So,
well, we feel, I think Shaun and I feel really fortunate that we know the 3 of you, you're in our lives, and we have a chance to benefit from the work you're doing. So thank you.
Thanks.
And Shaun is off.
Shaun is off. He's like,
he's to work.
So if you like today's topic or have comments, questions, or thoughts on what else you'd like us to cover, please drop us a line at info@rarelyfamiliar.com or connect with us on all the social channels. Resources, of course, anything that we talked about today will be listed in our show notes, and we'll be back next time with another discussion around living life successfully with rare medical complexity. Thanks for joining us on the journey.